Hey, it's Ryan with this week's Mille Fishing Report. It's late November, the bays have iced over, and the main lake is on its way. I'll get started by touching on the ice conditions. Right now, the main lake is still wide open, but there are some opportunities in the bays. The areas that I've checked out personally today, I found anywhere from 4.5 to 6 inches of ice throughout the bay I was fishing. Now that can vary a lot from bay to bay, and it can also vary a lot based on where you're at in the bays, especially if you get close to the mouths of the bays or if you're around points or any area that could produce a little bit of current. So make sure you check that out for yourself, but I've definitely found some walkable, fishable ice at this point. Now at first ice, your access and your options are pretty limited. I'm out here walking today, so some of the first things that I look for, the first structures I look for, are going to be something related to weed lines. Weed lines are easily accessible walking out here in the bays. What I tend to look for is the hardest line of good green cabbage that I can find. Wherever I can find green cabbage growing under the ice, oftentimes it's right around 10 feet of water, that's where I want to set up. Now, if I can narrow that down even a little bit more, if I can find where good green cabbage in that 10 foot of water range joins up to a harder bottom, say sand or rock or gravel, that's going to be a spot on a spot, and that's going to be one of my favorite areas to fish. A lot of times you'll find that the pike and the perch that you find in the bays, they'll be wherever there's cabbage, but wherever you can find a hard bottom adjoining that cabbage, that's an area where you're going to find walleyes also in the evening. The techniques that I use at this time are pretty straightforward. You know, I like a good sized minnow under a tip up, or one of my favorite things to do is sight fish through a spear hole. I like to get a big shiner or a medium sized sucker minnow and just put it a couple feet below the ice. A lot of times these pike will be roaming around, they're cruising, they're looking up, they'll see that minnow below the ice and they'll come up and grab it. It's a great way to catch big pike, and it's at its best from now until you start getting more traffic out on the lake. The other couple things I like to do are just use little tungsten jigs with bugs. It can be wax worms or it can be a little Euro larva. But the bugs and tungsten jig, it's a great way to catch perch. A lot of times there will be a lot of schools of perch in the bays, and most often they're going to be little fish. But if you're willing to do some sorting, a lot of times you can find some nicer fish. You can get some keepers out of the schools. So that's a great way to keep yourself busy, especially when you're waiting for the larger pike to come through. Now that hard bottom that I was talking about earlier, where you find the weeds adjoining the hard bottom, you can find the perch, you can find the pike on those areas, but in the evening it'll also give you a really good opportunity to catch some walleyes. For the walleyes, you can use a variety of different minnows, but I tend to go a little bit smaller. I like a good sized fathead or a smaller shiner minnow, maybe a good sized rainbow. Something like that, just kept about 1.5 to 2 feet off the bottom on a set line, is a great way to catch walleyes as the sun is setting. Or else I like flutter spoons. A lot of times I find that early in the season, it's a best time to be using a flutter spoon versus kind of a slab rattle spoon. The fish are pretty aggressive at first ice like we are right now, so the flutter spoon really attracts them from a long ways away. All I do is put a minnow head on a flutter spoon, jig it a foot or so off of the bottom right at sunset. A lot of times you'll find you get about a half-hour window where you can put a few walleyes upside. So those are the few patterns that I'm going to be focusing on at first ice until we start getting a little bit thicker and a little bit farther out in the lake. I'm going to be targeting the perch, the pike, and the walleyes in the bays on the weed lines. Hopefully these first ice tips help you out. Good luck fishing and stay safe.